Oh, gee, Funky Boxing. If you guys are new to the channel, subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell. I'm being joined by a very special guest tonight, a man who's been covering PEDs in boxing for at least 10 years now, if not longer. Let's give a big hand, everyone, to Gabriel Montoya.
That's
How's it
awesome.
going, bro?
It's going well, man. I'm just chilling, and I'm glad about a beat reporter anymore. I used to cover it. For people that don't know me, I used to write for a site called Doghouse Boxing, starting in 2006, which was like a sister site to the company I worked for eventually, which was maxboxing.com. When Doug Fisher became, he was one of the founders of that site, and when he became the editor in chief at Ring, I moved over into his position and as a co-lead writer with Steve Kim, we did the next round webcast and turned it into a radio show. And at the same time, I did Leave It in the Ring. Both of those podcasts I did about 1,000 episodes. And in the midst of that, I wrote about 75 pieces about performance enhancing drugs. I was, front row center for when Floyd asked Manny to do drug testing. And people used to ask me, in the column, it was like a, email column, like, what do you think about it? And I didn't really know anything about it. Uh, and so I endeavored to educate myself about it. And away I went. And I still like sitting on the sidelines. I'm like, drug testing and drugs and boxing are like the gift that keeps on giving, because it's like you had the thing up saying, we're talking about the drug problem in boxing, and I was the long view is like it doesn't have a drug problem; it has a drug habit.
Mm, it's a good way to put it. Yeah, that is a good way to put it. Yeah, me myself personally, just give my quick opinion on it. Um, yeah, you look at everyone kind of with a crooked eye because the way I see it is other sports. Now, of course, they're different from boxing, but other sports, everyone gets tested. There's no volunteering. There's no way around it. Everyone gets tested at some point. I mean, boxing has got to do something uh, similar to that, or else we're just all going to be looking and saying, "Well, this guy could be dirty. This guy could be dirty. Who knows?" So they just got to get something together, I think, and a lot of stuff to cover. But I want to make sure you guys stick around because we're going to talk about some of the recent stuff that's been going on with some of these fighters. And then Gabriel's been nice enough to give us some time. He'll be willing to take some calls from you guys if you guys have any questions on any of the subjects that we're going to cover, or if there's anything else you want to talk to him about on this subject. So, first things first, Gabe, the big news this week, slow week, but of course we get something. Alicia Bumgarner, 130-pound undisputed champion in the women's division, comes up and she tests positive for 2 banned anabolic steroids. She claims she's innocent. I heard her today go on to the Boxing Voice. I believe it was today. Maybe it was yesterday. I'm not quite sure. But she claims, I know who I am. I know myself. I would never do this, and the truth's going to come out. Even Jessica McCaskill has come out and made some wild claims about the situation. So I'm going to let you go ahead and speak on what you know. But for those of you that haven't seen it, this right here, this was released earlier today. This I actually got this from Dan Rayfield's Twitter page. He released this. This is the test that came back for Baumgardner. Gabriel, he knows how to read these things. I don't. There's maybe a few things I could touch on, but that's about it. So Gabriel, give us your thoughts on this situation, man.
Um, I'd like to be able to see that
Oh, okay.
what you got up. I didn't see it on Dan Raphael's thing. That's going to be hard to read. But
Yeah.
look,
Sorry.
it's all right. I'm 50, so it's and the TV's a little far away. But she tested positive for Mesturalone. I may be
Yes.
screwing that up. I'm reading it. I've never heard it said out loud. Synthetic anabolic androgenic steroid, a derivative of dihydrotestosterone. It's like anabolics are always just aping the OG, which is testosterone. Gives us our strength, helps us heal, makes us bigger, stronger, faster. Um, and the other drug was methanolone. It's also a synthetic steroid used for anabolic action. I believe that one is like um, helping with like muscle wasting, and it makes it so that you don't get bulk, but you do get muscle, which would be great for a boxer.
Right.
Um,
And if I could just interject real quickly,
Please.
I sent you that same image to your Twitter DM. If you want to look at it that way, you can.
Oh,
But go
well,
ahead.
yeah. What's I think the curious parts of this is just the samples, when they were collected. Um, and I think there's a few things in this. One, the sample was taken July 12th. It wasn't taken to the lab till like 20 or 9 days later. And then we got the result like a month later, which is just kooky. Drug free sport is the one that did it. Um, what's the point of pre-fight testing if you're not expediting the testing? And uh,
Yes.
as far as I know, like VADA, which is now has the longest track record in the sport, USADA started out first. VADA kind of came in after. By within a year, they were testing people and catching people. Unlike USADA, only ever really caught, I think, Eric Morales. Um, uh, but VADA, like when you do the sample collection, VADA will hire a sample collector. Claridium or IDTM is usually who they use, um, and that person will take it to a WADA accredited lab. If you've got Salt Lake City, or you've got the UCLA Medical Lab, and you could also go Montreal if you're near there. Um, but they expedite it. Like in the form, it's there. Like you can rush the sample. We need it back fast. That's an option. That was clearly not used here. And I think a big question that comes out of this is why wasn't it? I'd also like to know, I want to see the whole document here. Um, what all did they test for? But more importantly, what didn't they test for?
Mm.
Was EPO tested for on this? Um, was was HGH tested for on this? They're testing for cannabinoids. They're testing for narcotics. I'm seeing um, and diuretics and other masking agents. Um, but I'm not an anabolic agents. I'm just reading from the document. Peptide hormones, growth factors, um, but they're not. I'm not seeing EPO, and I'm not seeing synthetic testosterone. That's the big difference with VADA and the other agencies. Is that as a rule, like USADA, when they were in boxing, they might test for EPO and they might test for synthetic testosterone using CIR testing or IRMS testing. That's two names. Um, but VADA does that on every sample as a rule. And to them, which, Margaret Goodman, Dr. Margaret Goodman, who started VADA, and Dr. Flipomansky, they have Hall of Fame careers in boxing. They're ringside physicians. They headed up the Nevada Commission, medical board. They were um, they're experts in this particular type of medicine, which is like, kind of triage medicine, but also the ethos of boxing and combat sports and MMA. What these guys are taking, they live in Vegas where it all happens. What people are taking, how they're getting around it, they understand the politics. And so, as a policy, they went with we're going to have EPO and synthetic testosterone be the front line of our attack on doping in the sport. Um, some people are critical of that. Some people are critical of, like, I was on a show with D Style and Hispanics Causing Panic and Joe Abib, and Joe is very skeptical of VADA, particularly because Victor Conte is their big cheerleader, and a lot of people have because of Victor. But I think they're confusing not liking Victor's personality and history with them, and then making that be skeptical, but not really having any facts to connect the two. Victor doesn't work for VADA. Does he believe that EPO and synthetic testosterone are a problem? Yeah, because he doped athletes. He doped Shane Mosley with EPO against De La Hoya in the rematch, so he would know. There was something Joe said the other night with, like, there's no magical moment where Victor, suddenly became an angel, and I didn't disagree in the moment because he was talking. I didn't want to interrupt, but I would disagree. Victor went to jail. He had his name ruined forever. No matter what good he does, he'll always be known as a doper. But he's
Yeah.
out there. He got Nonito Donaire to do 24/7 testing with VADA. He got Edwin Rodriguez to do it. And I'm a simple guy. I'm just a Mexican kid from Hacienda Heights. I don't see deep conspiracies behind things. I like Occam's razor, which is like the simplest answers, generally the truth. And like what McCaskill was throwing out there, that Matchroom is like Alicia Baumgardner's last
Oh,
fight, and so they doped her as a way to get rid of her. Like there's so many moving parts in that conspiracy that it just doesn't make sense anymore to me than Victor and Dr. Margaret Goodman are in cahoots to sell Victor's supplements, and that's why he pushes fighters and fights towards VADA, and they're trying to educate fighters to fight in a more clean way. Like that just doesn't. And knowing both of them for 13 years each, or plus that, spending a lot of time around Victor, spending a lot of time on the phone and email with Margaret. We've actually never met in person. Um, I could just tell you that that's just nothing could be further from the truth. That they're working together somehow. I think they have common goals. I would don't I would never speak for Margaret or but I'm sure she's not a big fan of like Victor's very aggressive campaign on social media about how to kind of badgering fighters into doing VADA testing. Um, but yeah, I'm on a bit of a rant. But uh, looking at this case, these two drugs, they have specific uses. Um, they're used to raise testosterone levels. They give you lean muscle mass without adding a lot of bulk. Um, and then you look at other athletes. I think Alex Rodriguez tested positive for one of these drugs in
ooh,
baseball.
okay.
There was a case like a Ukrainian skier. Like that's what I always look at. Like remember when Meldonian got banned a few years ago by USADA?
Yeah.
And as soon as it did, or by WADA set the standard, they don't do testing. That was the other thing that McCaskill was all over the place with. Like I talked to WADA, and like WADA is not a testing agency. They set the protocol.
Yes.
They'll do like
Yes.
testing in certain places, but you can't hire them to do your testing, um, particularly not in boxing. Um, but when Meldonian became a banned substance, and then WADA kind of walked it back, just you looked across the board, and it was like amateur hockey players in Canada, a top level tennis player, and like and then a top level boxer, all tested positive, and there was like all these positives all over the world. What does that tell you? That sports has a drug habit, and that drug apparently works because everybody's doing it. Uh,
Yeah, it's a good way to put it, Gabe. And there's an old saying that I've been hearing a lot lately, at least over the past 20 years or so, since these things have been coming into the light. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. That's the thing that's been going around, man. And unfortunately, yeah, a lot of people they do reach out to these things, and the thing that really I don't want to say confuses me, but it's like people get busted so often with these things, and they always say the same thing. I don't know how it happened. I'm innocent. I'm a clean athlete. Turns out that that's not the case. I think
yeah,
that's going to be the case here too. But I like to wait for all the chips to fall. That's me. I know there's a lot of people out there that like to jump the gun, especially on social
yeah,
media. But for me, I like to let all the chips fall before I make any kind of decision. Um,
and they also say one other thing, like somebody screwed me over. They'll deny it first. I never knowingly took drugs. That's when you know they got a lawyer. Um, and then they'll attack the process. If they won't go after the B sample, generally speaking, because they know the B sample is just the same sample split in half, and it's like why spend the money? It's
yeah.
in there. But there's a new thing. People go, well, I tested negative before this, and I tested negative after it, so this makes no sense. And leaving out the fact that different drugs have different half lives, and that people microdose, trying to skirt the rules. Like, um, like the TE ratio. That was one of the first drug articles I wrote that got traction. Um, but everybody, testosterone to epitestosterone, we all have a ratio. It's usually 1 to 1. Depending on your ethnicity, it could be a little higher, but it's not like 4 or 5 to 1. It's more like 1.7 or 1.8, maybe 1.5, like that. Um, but the standard within sports from the World Anti-Doping Agency is 4 to 1. So you can have 4 times as much testosterone in your body as it naturally produces, which is insane. But it used to be 6 to 1. And then they
Yeah.
did, like, I think it was like a 10-year study, I want to say, and people were coming in like just under the limit, 5.9 to 1, 5.8. And they're like, well, that's really kind of coincidental. Then they lowered it. Now guys are like 3.9. Like everybody's always skirting the edge. 1 second, I want to take something that somebody said in the chat that Victor's a felon. Yeah, he
Oh,
got
okay.
busted. He got busted for uh, running a steroid ring. He did his time. He's now come out. He spent many years talking about anti-doping. He's poured a lot of money into it, sponsoring fighters to do testing. Isn't that the way our criminal justice system is supposed to work? Is you do your time and you come out and you don't wear the scarlet letter anymore, especially if you're doing kind of a community service. He's come into boxing. He's not in other sports, but he's doing his best to clean up the dirtiest sport there is. At some point, you got to let that go. Like one of my closest friends did, 23 years for murder. He's no longer that. He did his time. He works at a reputable job. He's a reputable member of his community. And I don't hit him over the head with that anytime he does something wrong. And I think that's the way we ought to look at that.
No, I agree
Particularly,
with you.
you know, um, so yeah,
I've known a lot of people in my family and my personal life that have done time as well. And yeah, it's an unfortunate thing that people don't like to let these things go. But like you said, that's supposed to be the point of the rehabilitation process, you know?
yeah,
So
B Hop's a
yeah.
felon or an ex-felon, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
it is what it is. You don't fight for money because, uh, you're Captain Code of Ethics, not
Exactly.
to say that
Yeah.
fighters aren't honorable people, but like speaking for myself, most people end up in boxing. They don't have other avenues. And so they're like, I know what I'll do. I'll fight for money. I'll risk my health in the most dangerous sport there is to make some money and make a better life for myself. Um, Nothing wrong with that. I think it's honorable. It's why I did what I did. I felt like having a good ringside seat. These guys deserved more than my paycheck. They deserved me looking out for them and trying to leave the sport better than I found it. You know.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true, man. So we were talking about Victor a little bit here. So let's continue to talk about it. Now, there was a tweet that he put out, and I did not put that here on the StreamYard. So I'll just go ahead and read it
Sure.
for the audience. Let me just pull that up real quick on my phone. Sorry, guys. I thought I had it. Okay, so I'm not quite okay. This was from a couple years ago, 4 years ago, actually. He put out a tweet that says, "My understanding is Al Heyman has requested that VADA not post the test results for his boxers." Now, is that something you heard? I know you sent me an article. If you want to touch on that, you can as well. Um, but what do you know about that, Gabriel?
Um, it's my understanding that that's true. I don't
I
know
heard the
about the
same thing.
results. Uh, to me, it's more like you'll notice how you can tell VADA testing is happening for a fight by watching VADA's Twitter feed. They'll do the welcoming tweet like, "Oh, these two people have welcome Alexander Usyk and whoever he's fighting to VADA testing. They've agreed to do it for their fight happening X date." Um, you'll notice that doesn't happen with PBC fighters. It's pretty
Hmm.
rare that that does. Um, I'm not sure if Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence put theirs up on if that came out. Um, I think that Al likes to control the narrative. He doesn't give interviews. Um, the the second fighter that tested positive with VADA was Lamont Peterson.
Right.
I'm
Right.
sorry, was Andre Berto. Lamont
Oh,
Peterson was the first, and he was fighting Amir Khan with Golden Boy. The second one was Andre Berto. And I know for a fact, is Victor was the one that was sponsoring him to go into VADA. And they had worked together in a previous fight. And then Andre went down to camp. I think he was training in Florida, or he was at 10 Goose for a minute, and then he was in Florida. Like he was no longer working at San Carlos, but Victor was talking to him. and he convinced Berto against Al Heyman's wishes to do VADA, and then boom, he tests positive for nandrolone. Um, and I think from that fight got canceled. It was like the early days of drug testing, and it was the early days of what I call third party drug testing, USADA and VADA being like the third party outside of the commissions. Um, and I think from that experience, losing that kind of money, uh, Al was like never again. And so, now we're in this period where, like, I think it was the Wilder Fury fight that I first noticed this. Um, Somebody told me that they were doing testing. I followed up with the Andy Foster, the commissioner for California State Athletic Commission, and his response was like, "You're not supposed to know that." And I think
Huh.
he said that on. I didn't go back and reread my article. I'm pretty sure I printed that. That he was like, "I don't think they want you to know that, or that it's out." But the recorder was going, and we were on the record, and he didn't say for me not to do it, so I printed it. Um, and yeah, it's from my understanding. Just trying to, I still keep tabs. I still like to know for me if a fight's VADA tested, and that's usually when I'm going through different sources. Um, when it comes to a PBC fight, it's generally a brick wall about drug testing. That doesn't mean though that if somebody tests positive in a PBC fight, we're not going to find out about it. That's not how
Yeah.
it works. That was the big difference between VADA and USADA in the early days, and why Richard Schaefer was pretty upset with VADA when Lamont Peterson and Berto tested positive, because he wasn't in control of the results the way he apparently was with USADA test results. As you
Mm.
saw with Danny Garcia and Eric Morales, when he tested positive, Morales, they pressured Danny Garcia and the fight went ahead. It was kind of a new world after that. So yeah, what Victor tweeted uh, is accurate. Well, in the sense that they don't want you to know the testing's happening, but as far as the results, I haven't seen anybody suppress any, and I think, considering my sources, I would know that.
Yeah, that's been a topic for a while, and of course, anytime a fighter tests positive for something, these things come up all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you also. There's been some more news that came out today, with in the beautiful world of PEDs. This one is
Gift that
regarding
keeps on
Connor
giving.
Benn. Right, right. This is regarding Connor Benn's case. He put this on his Instagram where he said, "I am disappointed at the news of an appeal being made, having already been cleared by both the WBC and the National Anti-Doping Panel to continue my career without any restriction. It was also disappointing to note that the media seemingly knew an appeal was being made before my legal team, and that there as a future branches of confidentiality, excuse me. There is clearly an agenda against me, and we have seen that from the start of the process. As I have said before, I am innocent. Nothing has changed. I remain confident in my position. I won't be commenting further until I let the legal process play out." Boy, that thing is turning into a circus, Gabe. Um,
Turning.
yeah, it's been there,
um,
but yeah, it's getting even worse. So
it,
go ahead,
it
speak on
was
that, man.
well, it's the world of Eddie Hearn. It's a weird place. I mean, why did he hire Drug Free Sport and not VADA for this Alicia Bumgardner fight? Uh, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I'll get to Conor Benn in a second, just to wrap up with Eddie. There was an article on Talk Sport today that was about an interview between Simon Jordan talking with, and he put out a clip of talking to Eddie Hearn, and he was saying, "I understand that you guys are using drug-free sport to test some of your fighters," and Eddie said, "You know, uh, we've used them," and he said, "Drug-free sport has tested our athletes before," and Jordan asked him recently, and Eddie said, "You know, they have been utilized by Matchroom for 3 to 6 months." But the truth of the matter was that 3 weeks before that conversation, Drug Free Sport was testing Alicia Baumgardner.
Mm-hmm.
So he caught him in a lie.
Yeah.
And like the title of the art, what Jordan was saying was like, what else is not true? So when you get to this Connor Benn thing, um, I think the Daily Mail is who broke the story. Um, UCAD, United Kingdom Anti-Doping, and the British Boxing Board of Control are the governing bodies, the governing body and the main anti-doping agency there in that jurisdiction. Those are the two people he needs to go through to get his license back and to clear his name. You can go to the WBC and they can do their kooky investigation and say it's eggs, and then he's like, "No, it wasn't eggs. What are you talking about?" That made no sense. That story. Uh, they cleared. Now he's saying, "Well, they cleared me," but like he had issues with how they did. Um, and then he went to this group, this other national board of control, or with the NADP, uh, to with the Independent National Anti-Doping Panel, which I gotta be honest, I'd never heard of, and
Mm.
my ignorance doesn't make them any less credible. I just had never heard of them, but he went to them and they cleared him, quote unquote. Uh, and now the two reputable groups, the BBBOC and UCAD, are filing an appeal because they're like, yeah, that's not. You can go venue shopping for the right answer. It doesn't mean that the answer that you come back with is actually right. Um, and
That's
I
a great
just,
way to put it.
yeah, he hasn't. It's like I think it was Chavez Jr. tested positive, and then so Eddie took him to Arizona to fight. Like it's called like venue shopping. You go to the place that's going to be favorable to you. It's like the former president's trying to move his court cases to a jurisdiction that'll be more, on his side. It happens all the time, and that's what Eddie appears to be, or at least Connor Benn's lawyers appear to be doing with Connor Benn, and it just, again, Occam's razor did, because he did the same thing. I never took it, and then it was like, well, it must be the lab must have screwed up or the testers screwed up, like everybody but him. And I think he's in so deep he can't. This is just my opinion that he can't come clean. But there was a baseball player, Ryan Braun.
Oh,
I think
yes, yes.
he had like a 23-to-1 TE ratio, something like that, really high. He did the same thing. He went to the mat. It was like that drug testing guy. He named the guy. He shamed the guy. Went all the way, and then came clean. It was like, my bad, dude. I did it. I'm sorry. And I wonder if we're ever going to get there with Connor, or if he's just gonna ride this to the end.
Yeah, man, it's crazy to see what's been going on, and he's been out of the ring now, going on close to a year. Uh, yeah, this is crazy, crazy stuff going on now. We talked a little about Eddie Hearn. Again, this is a third fighter now that we're going to mention who's had a drug, a drug problem with
Yeah.
matchroom boxing, and that's Dillian Whyte. Now, this is Dillian Whyte's third time testing for something. One time he actually got away with it and was allowed to fight, and nothing happened. This
First
time
time he
they,
got a 2-year ban, though.
yeah, yeah, and then now they removed him from his recent fight with Anthony Joshua, which was supposed to take place last Saturday. Robert Helenia steps in, but from my understanding, Gabe, and again, you know more about these drugs than I do, but I believe it's called
It's a rough word.
Molendustat or something like that.
Yeah,
And
I'm looking at it. It's hard.
yeah, and also from my and also from my understanding, it's an experimental drug. It's supposed to be some sort of, it's like an EPO where it produces that more red blood cells and the hypoglobin, I believe that's what it's called.
Hemoglobin. Yeah, it
Hemoglobin, yes.
basically acts like EPO, which is Lance Armstrong's favorite drug. It
Yeah.
increases red blood cell count, brings more oxygen to the muscles, and makes you go longer, harder, faster. It's the perfect drug for a boxer. You never get tired. You're like a machine. You just keep going and going and going. It's what Floyd Mayweather worried that Manny Pacquiao was on, because he was able to throw so many punches and seemingly not get tired. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, Floyd was the one that got caught with the IV and has the rumors of positive drug tests being covered up, whereas Manny did VADA for years and never tested positive and was still dropping fools late into his career. But that's an aside. Yeah, I mean, this drug, I think Marcos Villegas put this out earlier today. I saw on his Twitter feed. It's a new drug on me. But this is, you look at all of these drugs, they're all just trying to ape something else. They're also all trying to slide under the radar. Maybe there's not a test for it, or, apparently there is for this one. Uh,
Yeah.
and it doesn't look good, man. I mean, again, it's, I never knowingly took it and I've never heard of
Yeah.
this. And you just go, yeah, we've heard this before, dude.
And
And
it's a
this is your
drug.
third time.
Yeah, and it's a drug like we talked about. It's basically like not a thing yet, So like, how do you explain that to anybody? It's crazy. And Dylan White again doesn't have the best history. Now we talked about that with Victor Conte, but I mean, three times you're out, in my opinion, man. I don't care to see Dylan White anymore. He's, in my opinion, from a fan's perspective, he's just never been that good, never been that entertaining for me to watch. But yeah, I think this should be it. He should just go, man. In my opinion,
Somebody was saying we need
a
uh,
Conseco, yeah,
well, we kind of had one. There was a guy, Larry O. Larry,
yeah.
I don't want to mess up his last name, but if you look up, I should just put this on my website. I've got a website now, chemicalwarfare.ghostio.io, which I'm putting up slowly. It's like a Substack without political extremists on it, and I'm just putting slowly all 75 pieces up on this thing in my spare time. So hopefully by the end of this year it'll be done, and you'll have all these kind of evergreen pieces. But Larry O, I did like a two-parter with him, and he was more like a club level fighter, a British heavyweight. And this
Mm,
dude's program was like he was doing EPO. He had been a former track runner, and that's where he
ooh,
got his doping education.
a lot of
And
those guys are on it.
I think he also had a degree in like chemistry. So like he was away to the races, dog, and he got caught up. There was like a DEA sting. I forget what the name of it was, and he got caught up in it and turned on another guy in order to kind of avoid jail time, and just had to like come clean, and and was a wealth of information. And still, like you find him on Twitter. And he's become an actor now, and is a working actor, and really good guy, and just a wealth of knowledge, and will just like throw out, yeah, this guys are doing this, guys are doing that. Um, you'd be surprised, like you hang around enough gyms, it's just there. Um, I still train, like I used to boxing train and do martial arts, and now I roll, I do jujitsu, and like just the other day, like after I got off the uh, conversation with D Style and them, like the next day I was at my gym and the conversation came up. Hey, have you ever done TRT? Oh, you really like it. Really, you're fit. You're 50 now. Like now's the time, bro. And I'm not. It's just not my. It's not my jam. And I don't feel 50. So, but
Yeah.
but it happened so naturally. I was like, I just want to get stronger, and I feel like my technique's getting better, but I need a little more strength and explosiveness. And it was just like, have you tried TRT? And I've had that conversation in other gyms, talking with white collar boxer guys or whatever. It's always around. I mean, I think it's just like endemic to human beings to like alter our way of being. Whether you're taking coffee or tobacco or weed, we like to alter our consciousness. We like to change the machine and see if it can go faster or better, or lose weight or gain weight. Like, and so why wouldn't people doing the hardest thing in the world, sports, look for that extra edge? I don't think it's malicious. I think it's you're trying to make your body, go faster, harder, and better. Um, but in boxing, it does feel malicious because this is the hurt business and people get killed.
Yes, yes, and we have a question here in the chat. So Alicia for sure is dirty. I mean, look, again, we wait. We're gonna wait for everything to come out, but it
Yeah,
just
man.
does not look good. Let's just say that. uh,
Yeah.
so what? And then here we have another comment here from my man Shoeshine Boxing, who lives in Vegas, and he says, "I live in
Yeah.
Vegas, and they push TRT all over town to every guy over 40."
Oh,
man.
dude, there's like, I'd like to see a study. Is there more dispensaries or TRT clinics in Los Angeles and Vegas? Because they're like, you could throw a rock and hit one or the other. And like when I broke the story on Lamont Peterson, he'd gone to this place called the Desert Oasis, run by this guy, Dr. John A. Thompson, and he had a pellet inserted into his hip. It was like a slow release testosterone pellet that's supposed to last like 6 months and deliver like 50 milligrams a week or whatever, and kind of shore him up because he was feeling fatigue. And I think that's just a prevalent thing, all over the country. The same year that Floyd went up to 54 to fight De La Hoya, uh, he reconnected with an old sponsor of his from the amateurs named Don Hale, and his brother Dan Hale was a doctor. And that same year that they hooked up with Floyd, they opened 24 TRT clinics across the country, including in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Tennessee, and Miami. And then after the Cotto fight, the state of Tennessee shut them down for giving out illegal prescriptions for testosterone and HGH. It's a highly unregulated business. And that was like 24 clinics. Like Biogenesis was only one clinic. And
Hmm.
people treated that like a huge, like a Balco-like scandal. And it isn't. It's just a highly unregulated business where you can get a very powerful drug.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. And I've never even heard of that. Putting a pellet, like you said, in someone's hip, and it just kind of
It's
releases over
wild.
time. Wow, that is absolutely crazy.
You can
Guys,
put
I
it in
just
cream. You can put it in a lollipop, patches. Like I was rolling with a guy in San Francisco. And he kind of was ragdolling me, and like he sat up when the bell rang, and like kind of stretched, and his shirt went up, and he had a freaking patch, and I was like, "What's that, dude?" He's like, "It's a patch for like TRT," and I'm like, "Yeah, man, you already outweigh me by 40 pounds. Like we're good. Like I'm good." And the difference was palpable to me.
Yeah, this is crazy stuff, man. But yeah, that's why I bring people on like this so that we can learn. Okay, guys. This again, I tell you this all the time. My channel, I want it to be about information. I want it to be about knowledge and things like that. And that's why I always get people that know more about these topics than myself. And I just have a few more questions, and then we're gonna open up the phone lines, guys. So if anybody wants to call in and ask Gabe something about any of these topics, feel free to call in. Just a few more questions I got, and then we'll do that. Um, so Gabe, I want to ask you another thing. I sent you some. Hopefully, you still have them. I sent you some images um, from some tests back, and I believe this was 2013 with Mr. Floyd Mayweather about some some TE ratios that seem kind of odd. Here's a bigger
Oof.
picture right here. Um, but yeah, could you let us know a little something about this, Gabriel? Because I had these for a while, but I just haven't had a chance to talk to anybody that really knows about it. So let us know what you know about this stuff, man.
Well, this is from Tom Hauser's piece on Floyd, right?
Mm-hmm.
And USADA. It was kind of a multi-part piece. Um, so this kind of comes out of, not to take any shine off of Hauser, um, but I'm going to do that. In the spring of 2012, this is kind of how I really made my bones. I'd already written like 25 pieces on drugs. And then I broke a bunch of positive drug stories in a row, like 5 and 6 weeks. It was kind of crazy. Um, it was like Lamont Peterson, Berto, Antonio Tarver, Rafael Cavalcante, who was Anderson Silva's chief sparring partner. And then the drug testing that didn't happen between Winky Wright and Peter Quillen. Like it started on a Monday and then it ended on a Friday, and they threw the samples out on a Saturday. Um, and in the midst of that, I must have said the wrong thing or something on the radio, or somebody was bugging my phone. But I'd heard the rumor. I got a call from a source who is a great source that I trusted. I would call this person an A plus in terms of their information. But I never verified this, and I didn't. I don't think I spoke about it. I think they would have mentioned it, but uh, they told me that Floyd Mayweather had tested positive 3 times and that USADA had covered it up. That's what they
Mm.
had heard. Uh, and I didn't know what to do with it. I was on my way to a party and I was like, that's a bombshell. Let me sit with it. And so I went to this party, and that was a Sunday. Wednesday, I go to the Ortiz. It was an Ortiz fight presser. Richard Schaefer lies to my face, saying there's Peter Quillen and Winky Ryder not doing drug testing. I go home, check my email, and there's a cease and desist from I think it was either lawyers for Golden Boy or Floyd, saying stop spreading a rumor that Floyd Mayweather has tested positive 3 times, and USADA covered it up, or we're going to sue
Wow.
you. Uh, I sent back a reply saying, I haven't said that. That's interesting information. Why don't you send me all the documentation that proves that's not true and the contracts, and we'll go from there. And they never responded. And the following Monday night, I printed it and I printed my response, and they never sued me. So then, about a year later, I would say, maybe more, uh, maybe it was after the Floyd Manny. I'm not exactly sure when his story came out, but Hauser did this in-depth thing on Floyd, and the whole IV controversy came out, and he printed these. He got these medicals from these, I have to check the dates on the fights, but they're from 2 different fights. These medicals, and his TE ratio is super low in both of them. And what that would say, and this is just allegedly, I'm not trying to get sued here, but somebody with that physique doing drug testing, to me, with a TE ratio that low, it's like they were doing something that would have kicked up their TE ratio, but then they cycled off. And now your body's not making testosterone anymore. It's kind of restarting its cycle. And so you
Hmm.
have this low testosterone level, but you're still at a normal epitestosterone level. That's what it looked like to me. I think Victor Conte spoke on it quite a bit and said the same thing, and it didn't look good. You know, it's that old thing of whoever smelt it dealt it. I mean, he's the guy that got caught with the IV, and yet he couldn't shut up about Manny. And you kind of go, did game recognize game? Because here's the thing about Floyd. Yeah, he did drug testing, but he did it only twice a year. He fought twice a year for many years, May and September.
Yeah. Hmm.
What was he doing in the other time? He wasn't getting drug tested. I asked him before the Ortiz fight, are you going to get? Are you going to do the gold standard of testing, like which is like year-round testing, the way they do in the Olympics? And his response was, "I'll do the platinum standard if they have that," but didn't answer the question.
Yeah.
Um, and later on, when I asked him around the Cotto fight about Don Hale, he said, "Oh yeah, I fly Don to my fights. I go hang out with him and his kids, and I visited his." And before they were testosterone replacement companies, they were hair replacement therapy companies, uh, which I don't know. I don't know if that's he was giving people testosterone and saying it'll grow your hair back. But Floyd was about to say one thing, and then he switched it to hair replacement therapy clinics, which I always found interesting. But to me, those TE ratios are very suspect, because what happens when you take synthetic testosterone or you take anabolic steroids is it's aping your testosterone production, right? But your body's getting flooded with too much. So then at a certain point, it shuts down its own production in order to kind of balance it out. Um, and so that might have been what we were seeing. It's why guys take like the estrogen blockers, like the fertility pills. It's because your body goes all out of whack once you come off the cycle, and it might start making too much estrogen to account for all the testosterone that's in your body. And that's why dudes end up with like breasts, or that gyno is what they call it.
Yeah.
Um, um, it's because your body's hormones are just going wild. Um, so yeah,
Wow. That's a lot of
I know
stuff, man.
it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't
But
even go to
yeah.
college, but
Oh, that's funny. But yeah, that's been a topic for a long time. And yeah, Mayweather's been the guy who's, been upfront about let's do Olympic style testing for boxing. But yeah, there's things that have been coming out, and he got caught with the IV. So a lot of stuff, man. A lot of stuff has happened since that, since all that came out. But guys, here's a time now. If anybody wants to call in, we're gonna stick around for a little bit. If nobody calls in, then we'll just wrap it up. But Gabriel, again, he's given us his time. He's willing to speak to anybody about any of these things. So don't be afraid to call in. Call us. Let us know what's on your mind. But I want to ask you to do this while we're waiting for a call, Gabe.
Sure.
When we're talking about what McCaskill had to say earlier today about WADA, right? Yeah, which is crazy.
Wild.
I I remember when the Valdez situation happened in I believe it was the fall of 2021,
Mm,
where he tested positive for a banned substance, not a performance enhancing drug, but a banned substance, phentermine, which is I believe it's a stimulant.
yeah.
Um, People were upset that he was allowed to fight. Now everybody's saying, look, VADA says it's banned. WADA says you can use it as long as it's out of competition. So can you explain that to the fans out there, Gabe? The difference between VADA, what their protocols are, and what WADA, and why he was allowed to fight.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I was on the fence. It's a real gray area, and I think the more people you test, the more each case. I always say that each positive drug case is a story waiting to be told. Sometimes it's a window into a guy's program, um, like the even to looking at the TE ratio or the IV. You're like it's a peek into something much bigger. Um, Sometimes it's an honest mistake. Um, with Valdez, I feel like he wasn't trying to cheat. From what I kind of know behind the scenes on that one, I can't uh, divulge, but I felt that he was on the up and up, and he was trying to do things behind the scenes to clear his name, and he wasn't able to get that done. But I didn't feel that he was juicing, and I thought he was treated rather unfairly. VADA isn't a WADA signatory. The World Anti-Doping Agency, they set kind of the policies and drug protocol standard for the world. For most like amateur sports, and then some of the pro sports kind of live up to that. Some of them don't. Even the commissions, the WADA says that they have a TE ratio of 4-1. New York and Nevada have a 6-1, so you can have 6 times as much testosterone there. WADA still prohibits THC use, although that threshold is coming up higher and higher. No pun intended. But VADA has never tested positive, or has never tested anybody for THC because they don't agree with its prohibition, and they don't think it's like a performance enhancer. If the benefits of it, uh, in terms of healing, maybe outweigh anything else. Um, but they're stricter about what you can use in terms of stimulants. But I think why there's a difference is because, and then they also have the whole EPO and carbon isotope ratio um, synthetic testosterone test as their openers, rather than somebody has a bad TE ratio and then we do the carbon isotope ratio testing model that everybody else uses. Because I think they're trying to catch people, and they think that those are the drugs. They live in Vegas. They know all the TRT clinics are everywhere, and a lot of pro boxers are there, and it's easily accessible. They've been there working in the fight game for like 30 years, and so their whole program is more focused based on that knowledge. It's focused on that community. Whereas I don't think VADA really cares. Like, when there was all the controversy about USADA, I was going to people, what are the head people in WADA to get them to try to come down and look and say, hey, are they covering up tests? And they were like, it's boxing, man. Like, it's dirty sport. Like they didn't seem to care, um, and so I think it's based out of that, the need to catch the drugs that people are using. That's why they're different. And I get people are still on the fence about them, but it's been 13 years, and they've caught a lot of people. But I think, yeah, the more testing that you do, the harder it's going to be. I think the reason they get maligned so much, though, is that, there's four sanctioning bodies, but only one of them has a clean boxing program and uses VADA. The other three ignore them. Um, there's like 76 different jurisdictions, from just the states, but also the Indian or native territories. Um, they all have their own different drug testing standards, and UCAD, maybe they accept VADA, maybe they don't. There's boxing is, as Ludabellis told me when many years ago, boxing is not a sport; it's a series of individual business transactions. And so, because of that, we're not a league. So there's no way that VADA can like oversee everything unless everybody agrees to do that. And as we're seeing with Eddie Hearn, kind of venue shopping, they're not doing that, and so it makes VADA look toothless when they get undermined by the WBC, like they did with Connor Benn, or when they get the end around the way Eddie Hearn has been doing with Connor Benn and with this, using drug-free sport instead of that. So
Got you. Got you. We got our first call tonight. My man Joseph Haran. How's it going, bro?
Oh, hanging in there, brother. A little bit under the weather, but really enjoying the inside of your show. Really enjoying all of Gabe's expert commentary on this topic.
thank you.
And I tell you what, credit to you, Gabe. I'll tell you what, now more than ever, brother, in this era of quote unquote new media, we miss you, brother, in this business of boxing, sir.
I really appreciate that, man. There are times that I'm like, I should come back out and start writing again, because I feel like I got started in it because I was like, there's a hole here, um, in the kind of coverage I wanted to see. And then when I got into the drug thing, I was like, there's a big hole here, and we really need this. But uh, you know, uh, I'm an actor at heart. I did that for 17 years before I ever wrote a word, and I went back to that, and it's been pretty good. Been doing some theater, and now I'm in LA starting to do some film, although we're all on strike. And so, I don't know. At some point, I was like, I got tired of getting beat up, man. Not physically, but like, just getting it from like all
I
sides.
understand exactly what you're saying, brother. It's almost
Yeah,
a thankless endeavor most of the time. But
dude.
yeah, man, follow your dreams, follow your passion. If that's what your passion is right now at this time in your life, there's a saying: dreams are only dreams until you try.
That's
So
absolutely
hey,
right.
best of luck to you, my brother. Best of luck to you. But going back to our your conversation, I wanted to get your position on now. There are consistently banned substances that are added every single year to the banned
Hmm.
substance list. And what do you think? How should this be handled when someone's already in camp and something gets added to the banned substance list and they test positive? Should there be a little more leniency in that situation? Because I think something similar, maybe you can provide more insight on this. Didn't Povetkin pop dirty for something that was just added to the banned substance list while he was in camp? I think it was for the Wilder fight, wasn't it?
I think it was Meldonian. I think that was the one, and it hit a lot of people in a lot of sports, and then they walked it back. I think it's just a matter of a longer grace period to let everybody come off the drug, maybe more of a
Mm-hmm.
study to you know uh, uh, to see if it's really a performance enhancing drug. That's an area I haven't really written about, so I'm not fully versed in it. But it's always a slippery slope. It's what's not illegal today is illegal tomorrow, and but as we saw, like with this Dillian White drug, I had never heard of that drug. Um,
Right.
there's always something new, and even with Balco, with Victor Conte, like the cream in the clear were these new drug. They'd like changed the molecule and made this THG. They couldn't figure it out. Like, what is this drug? Because it was something new. And Memo Heredia says you can make a designer drug for a certain price that's undetectable. And so I think it's, we're always going to be in this kind of race. It's kind of a weird drug war that we're in, and just like the other drug war, it's underfunded. Well, actually,
Mm.
no. I think the police drug war is overfunded, and we should end it. But this one, I think, is needed, and maybe we could move some of those funds over. I don't know.
And also, Emmanuel Stewart, before he passed away, God rest his soul, he
Yeah,
couldn't
man.
stand strength and conditioning coaches, right?
Nope.
And once again, he and he was very adamant about one gym and one group specifically, and they're going to go unmentioned. But I wanted to get your thoughts on. Oh boy, he used to always say this. We never had to worry about this until strength and conditioning coaches infiltrated our beloved boxing, and now we have to worry about everybody. Do you think there should be, if what a fighter that they're working with tests positive, should they receive a lifetime ban from boxing?
Oof. Yeah, that's rough. They have to really prove intent, I think. But I do think that, say, like Jean Pascal got caught with EPO. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he should have to, in order to get a license to fight again, he should divulge where he got it and who he got it from, and we should deal with that person if it's a strength and conditioning coach, and there should be penalties for them. It shouldn't just all be on the fighter, because they didn't, like Freddie Roach. One of my favorite things he ever said on Leave It in the Ring was like, if you want to get rid of drugs in boxing, get rid of the strength and conditioning coaches, because there's the ones that brought it in.
Yep.
I know, irony, but
Yep.
Um, it is what it is. But thank you for invoking Emmanuel. He was a mentor of mine, and one of the first big interviews I got in the sport. And we used to speak regularly, man. And I was pretty devastated when he died. I have to be honest. Our
we all
last
were.
conversation, I was calling him about. I think it was the Andy Lee fight and kind of the chicanery that went on down there with Chavez Jr.
Oh
Oh
boy.
boy. Yeah.
The last thing he said to me was, "I'm not feeling well. I'll call you back." And he was dead 3 days later. And it was just, but to leave it on an up note, this is pretty wild. The manual would never let me call and just talk about boxing. He would ask me who I'm dating, how's life going, let me know that there was more to this than people beating each other up. And so, like, when I reconnected with the woman who's now my wife, that was for the other reasons I left boxing. Was I moved to San Francisco to do theater and to get married to my wife, who was the one that got away 11 years previous to me ever entering boxing. And like, we broke up like 3 weeks after 9/11, on the night that my favorite fighter Tito Trinidad got knocked out by Hopkins. It was brutal, right? So 11 years later, she's been to Burning Man 8 times. She's taken me my first burn. And Emmanuel was the reason we got on the phone again after 11 years. We were emailing, and she's like, "You seem really upset," and because I couldn't go to the funeral, she's like, "Give me a call." We start talking. We're engaged within a year, and she's like, "Well, we got to go to Burning Man before we get married." So we go out there, and it takes about 3 days to get kind of acclimated to being out there. It's pretty wild. It's like another world. And she's like, on the Wednesday dawn, she's like, "Let's go to the temple." And the temple is like where everybody puts up prayers, and like, it's a giant wood pyramid that year. And they people are crying there. They're writing letters to loved ones and putting on the wall. It's the last thing that gets burned on the Sunday at the ending of Burning Man. And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's go." And we park our bikes. And she's thinking, this guy used to be an actor. That's how we met. But now he's a boxing writer, and I'm doing this other stuff. Like, I don't know if this is going to work. And that's what the whole Burning Man thing was for us. And so I park my bike at the bike racks, and we walk a straight line to the temple, about 20 feet. And we don't look at anything else. And I literally walk right up, and there at the foot of the temple is a snapshot of Emmanuel Stewart. And somebody's written on it, "Keep punching." And I fucking lost it, dog. I was like, it was like the funeral that I didn't get to go to, but it was like this cosmic. Emmanuel was saying, "Yeah, dude, you guys are good. This is going to be all right." So the wildest shit I've ever seen. So
Wow.
thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you know what, man? Oh, you know what, brother? The boxing is our business, our sport. It hasn't been the same since his passing. Most people who didn't know him,
Agreed.
they don't realize how good he was. Everything about him was good, and he was
Yeah, dude.
unwavering, unflappable. He wouldn't compromise integrity for anyone. Yeah, he was truly the greatest of all time, in my opinion.
I
And
agree.
yeah,
The sport changed for
we
me
miss him every day. Yep.
every day.
Hmm.
There's no question.
Yep. Well, God bless you, Gabe, and thank you for sharing your insight on this on G Funky's channel. And best of luck to you, brother, in your endeavors. And I hope you're successful and very happy in your in what you're aiming for. Shoot high, brother. God bless
Thanks,
you, my
Joe.
friend.
Yeah, back at you, man. I really
All
appreciate it.
right, Joe. Thanks for the call, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Let's give my guy a hand for a great phone call there. And indeed, guys, we're going to stick around for a few more minutes. We would, again, Gabe's here. He's willing to take some calls from you guys. We have a question from the chat, though. What fights did Mayweather allegedly have the low TE ratios?
Well, I'll pull up the box rec if you pull up those documents, and we'll match those dates.
Okay. I believe, let's see. The date here is, it says that the sample was taken on the April 13th of 2013, I believe. Yeah, let me look at it on my phone. I could probably see it much better there,
So is
but I
that
think that's what I read.
that's Guerrero?
Ah, Robert Guerrero. Okay. Okay, we got another phone call coming in, guys. Give me 1 second.
And there's another one though, right? You sent me two uh, of those documents.
Yeah, I think the second page is, I think it's from the same test, but I'm not sure. But we got another call here, 206. My man, you're live.
What's good? What's good, G Funky? How you doing, Gabriel Montoya?
Hey, what's up?
Doing.
I'm
So
doing
I
well.
I did have I had a question. So because I remember seeing your work way back in 2011, 2012 when you were first bringing out the situation with Floyd Mayweather, right?
Mm-hmm.
In my with the negative or the positive test that he had taken I forgot what in particular, but my question would be, because from what I'm looking at, majority of the people, and I'm looking at from this standpoint with all these athletes, because I remember 2012 there was an incident on ESPN magazine where Derrick Rose came out on pretty much all the NBA, including his
Right.
Olympic team and his buddies, right? That same magazine, there were other fighters, or I mean, there was other athletes from other sports. I know Steve Thompson talked about this in MMA of certain people he felt was taking steroids, but they didn't mention names. He said, well, how are 40-year-olds able to compete with 30-year-olds? And there was another boxer that said the same exact thing. And when you look at the guys that were up on top at the time, it made, to me, it is very apparent, right? So the lead-up question I had, so I'm bringing all this out to ask this question, right? Because there's a lot of guys that try to play vigilante with this situation, but a lot of times it could just be a cover up for them to point the finger at someone who's more obvious versus someone who potentially or could be taking something on the low. What is your thoughts on that in particular with certain individuals that that try to play that vigilante role? You know what I'm saying? There's different people out there. Even you had John Pascal who kept calling Bernard Hopkins a cheater, and
yeah. And he tests 33 times.
Well, and then he hired Memo Heredia, and then he ends up testing positive.
Right.
And everybody goes quiet. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. The question is.
No. Yeah, no. So what my thing is, I mean, what do you say about that with those individuals? Because I mean, they used to say that VADA was the best testing, but VADA was only catching certain people, and it wasn't really that frequent. So what do you say to those people or that mindset?
Well, I mean, Vada caught the first person on the first sample that they took. The first person they ever tested, and then they caught Berto. Um, I'm not quite sure what the question is. Of just, are you saying
Okay.
that Vada is like a smokescreen and that they're only catching certain people?
Well, yeah, like Vada, and then you have other people that accuse other people of taking stuff, but the potentiality of them taking stuff is what would you say to that? Because there's been examples that there's been multiple examples of that, of certain individuals saying that this guy's taking stuff, but then of course either they are suspicious of taking some things. So basically, what I'm asking is, what do you say to those? What is your thoughts on those individuals or even testing agencies?
Well, I'll say like is like Paulie Malignaggi is a guy that points a lot of fingers and
Hmm.
seems to be very knowledgeable, but he never comes across with names. Uh, but he points at Pacquiao quite a bit, and yet when Ariza was still there at that gym, Paulie in the later end of his career showed up and started training at that gym with those guys. So did he see something there, or did he know that they were doing something there? Um, he always speaks as if he has like knowledge of actual knowledge of people using. Uh, is it a case of whoever smelt it dealt it? I'm not sure. With Vada, I think that I've heard different things. That people think they're just only catching certain people and they're a smokescreen for Victor Conte. Like he brings people to them, but I mean, he brought Berto there, and then Berto tested positive. Um, did he sacrifice Berto? I mean, it's like Occam's razor. Like, does that make a lot of sense? I think he also brought Edwin Rodriguez there for a year of testing. Um, he was pushing Spence and Crawford to do testing, and he was working with Crawford. I mean, maybe he's using it as a smokescreen, but I tend to go with the simple answer is that he believes in VADA and their protocol, wants clean sport, won't say as much, but I think he's still atoning for what he did, and as a positive of a guy as he is in terms of his outlook on life and how happy he is all the time. He's pretty he's got a lot of money and successful business and a nice circle of people around him. Um, I think it still wears on him that his name is in the mud, and so he's still bringing people there. I don't know if that answers your question, but I do think the guys that are the loudest, those are the guys you do have to look at sometimes. It's like, what? How do you know what you know? I know
Yeah.
how Victor knows what he knows because he used to deal drugs. Um, but I don't know um, like why Paulie knows what he knows. Why did Jean Pascal hire Memo Heredia when he'd just been outed as like an ex PED dealer himself by Max Boxing? In the Marquez fight in the lead up to that, he came in with a different name. I mean, he was a Mexican dude. So he's got four names, but he was only using two of them, and it was the two that weren't. He went by Angel Hernandez initially, and then Victor called Steve Kim and was like, "Hey man, are you watching 24/7? That's Angel Memo Heredia. That dude was a drug dealer." And then he changed his name back to Memo Heredia after he got outed. Um, but what's interesting too about that is that like one of the other things I did in the sport was Lucien Boutte was going to fight Pascal, and so they were worried about Memo Heredia being in the camp, and so they asked me to design a drug testing program for Jim and Interbox to use, and they entered into this agreement. And Memo was really upset about it and didn't want to do it, didn't want to do VADA testing either, just was skeptical of the whole thing. And I think one of them eventually got injured and they didn't do it. But then years later, Lucien Boutte hired Memo, and then Lucien Boutte tested positive for SARMs at some point um, within that window. So it's a small community, and I think the older athletes the more they're chasing youth. Um, but it is what it is, and I don't know if I've answered your question. Did you certainly ping some
Oh,
things
oh
for
no,
me?
Yeah, I think
oh
the
no, you. You
I
answer the
think he
question.
did,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And going back to a case that just happened with Alicia Baumgartner, which came out a couple days ago. I mean, and this happens all the time, especially in today's world where everything is so fast with the internet. They're already pulling up interviews of her being asked about Connor Benn and how she says certain things about him, but then now she's busted. So it always, 206, you're always, it's always that way with these guys who, or anyone who mentions it, they always end up popping themselves, and it's,
Well,
it's
Floyd, I
crazy.
mean, yelling at Manny for years to be the best, you have to take the test. And then when they finally fight after 6 years, who's the guy that gets caught with the IV? You
Yeah.
know, and then has to get a
Yeah.
retroactive 2E for it. It's like, really,
hmm
dude? Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
doping, the word goes back to the very first Olympics in, like, I think 7 AD. I think it's a 7 or 11 AD. And it comes from a opium juice that people used to take called dupe. That's literally where the word comes from. So it's doping and sports, go together like PB&J, back to the beginning of time.
Yes. Yes, sir. Anything else? 206. You wanna ask Gabe?
Yeah, just one. Yeah, one more. Gabe. So
Sure.
yeah, with that, uh, do you think that there's anybody that I mean, because it's like this with the top shelf athletes in general, right? And I've seen this in I'm just gonna say this. I've seen this in gyms, guys that were Bellator UFC fighters, that ended up fighting the UFC and Bellator and whatnot, right? Is there anybody? Do you think that there's anybody that's really not taking anything that's at the highest levels? Because
Hmm.
I think it's more of who's not on it versus who is on it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, there's a Memo Heredia quote: "Doping at the elite level of no, it was peak performance at the elite level of sports without doping is a fairy tale." Um, and
Yeah.
you know, I used to put a percentage on it back when I was a little bit younger and cockier as a boxing writer. Uh, Now I try to go by what I know and based on the cases. But it's like, look at the top 10 of the heavyweight division and how many of those guys have popped positive, or top 20, and that may be a sample size of the whole sport. Um, but I do believe there's clean athletes out there. But I think that the whole thing is kind of intersectional. It's like the thing we take for granted is everybody making weight. And I've long believed that making weight is kind of the gateway to all the drugs. Um,
Oh yeah.
the older athletes
Yeah.
take it to kind of prolong youth, but I think the first drugs you take are to lose weight. You're taking it in the gym, like this will rev your metabolism and you'll start to lose weight, or take this diuretic and you can start losing some weight. And then you're on the road, and at a certain point you need a little more strength, or you need a little more of this, and so you take this or you take that, and you just further down the road. um, so it's almost like it's like the frog in the pot with the water getting hotter. Like, you don't really notice that you're doing drugs until you're injecting EPO in your stomach, I guess. uh, you
Yeah.
know
It's one
so
of
I
those
don't know.
things.
It's hard for me to say, how many are taking it, but I think it's part of the culture. Like I said, I think boxing has a doping habit.
Me too. Me too. And I think that until they come up with something to where all these fighters can be tested, like the other sports, then yeah, it's hard to look at everybody and say, yeah, are you clean or you're not? It's hard. I mean, some of the athletes, they test year round, so we got to give them their credit for that. But yeah, not everyone does it. But hey, 206, man, always a pleasure hearing from you, man.
Oh yeah, man. Salute to you, G Funky, for sure. It's always a pleasure, and salute to Gabriel Montoya, man.
Hey,
Absolutely,
thank you very
brother.
much. Appreciate
Take
it.
care, bro.
Yeah, maybe if we had a fighter union, they would have bargaining power to ask for a drug testing, kind of universal program. Maybe if there was a promoter, remember there was like for a minute that there was like a promoters association, that never really got off the ground. But like until there's a collective bargaining and like a kind of unification within the sport, it's going to be hard to get a universal testing program because there's no leverage, you know.
Yeah, and you know what, Gabe? I stand corrected. You were right. Those were two different medical reports on Mayweather.
Oh,
The one of them was from. Hold on.
is
My
it the
phone's-
Ortiz fight? It's 2011.
Yeah, one was from. It says date and time collected was 4/3/13, and date reported was 4/16, I believe, of the same year. The lettering's kind of blurry there. And this one here says 8/18/11, I believe. And
I
then
picked
the date,
Ortiz.
yeah. So it was Ortiz and Guerrero when these two documents came about from Floyd Mayweather. Uh, yeah, the guys who talk often about it are usually the ones that come out and we find out that they're taking something like. I mean, as a young man, I remember watching the Max Boxing back when the internet was becoming an easier thing to get on. You know, it didn't take all day long to get on the internet.
Yeah.
For those of you who are as old as myself, yeah, you know, you might not remember that, but there was a time where it literally took all day to get on the internet. But yeah, Max Boxing was the first site that I remember as a young fan being able to watch videos of interviews, training camps, the media day workouts, all that stuff. And I remember vividly, and me and my friends would always laugh about this. Pascal and Hopkins, I believe, was at one of the press conferences for their fight, and he's telling them, take the test. And Hopkins is getting upset. And the funny thing is, Hopkins never took a test his entire career. And then it turns out that Pascal pops 3 times in his career for steroids or something, you know. So it's a little funny how that works out.
Yeah, the company that he's a partner in that started drug testing in boxing, and Hopkins never VADA, never USADA.
Yeah.
You know, I asked him about it. He was for it, but you know, I'm for a lot of things that I'm not doing. I guess you know, it's like you know, I'm fine with guns. I don't own one. You know, it's like it's whatever. You know, it's just funny.
Yeah, same with me.
And that he changed his name from the executioner to the alien,
Alien.
because he
Yeah.
must be, because he's able to fight till he's 50 at a high level.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Cool, bro. Cool story. Cool story.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna wrap this one up, guys. I don't want to keep Gabe too long. It's getting late. But I do appreciate you coming on, man. But before we go, I want to ask you, boxing has been on fire this year, Gabe. We've had a lot of big fights, and there's a lot more fights that have been announced over the last couple weeks. I want to get your thoughts on a positive note here about boxing. I want to get your thoughts on this
Thank
year
you.
we've had, you know?
Yeah. Nobody ever asked me my opinion about the actual fights.
So yeah, what do you think, man, of this year so far? And what really stands out to you?
Spence Crawford I was there, man, and it was awesome. I had a great seat, and a buddy of mine hooked me up, and it was just everything. Welterweight's always been my favorite division, and I was partial to both guys. You know, I've loved Errol Spence coming out of the Olympics. Crawford kind of snuck up on me. My old writing partner John Novoselic, who was like my undercard writer, and I would write the main event at Doghouse Boxing. He knew Terrence Crawford because he knew the TKO promotions guys when Terrence was with them before Top Rank, and so you'd always talk up Crawford. He's like, dude, this guy's going to be something. And I'd be like, you know, he looks pretty good, but we'll see. And to see that performance, you'd have to almost go back to Hopkins Tito to see like a high level performance like that, or maybe Jeff Lacey and Joe Calzaghe.
Yeah, I can go back to Mayweather Corrales, even though that breaks my heart because I'm from Sacramento, and Corrales is one of the best fighters we had come out of the city.
Yeah,
that was a dominant performance. Can't say anything about that. But yeah,
I was living in Sacramento watching that fight live, and
really,
yeah, man.
Man.
Yeah, I lived in Sac for a long time, and oh yeah, brutal. But like
brutal.
What Crawford did and what NOA did the week before, boxing is just alive and well at like every level. And I know people are saying, Crawford's clearly number one. I don't really do pound for pound lists, but I think those are the two best fighters in the sport right now. But you got to throw Usyk in there, and I really wish Fury would not be fighting Ngannou and actually be fighting Usyk. But he's kind of like John L. Sullivan, Sometimes John L. would go off and he would do like his barnstorming events and wouldn't defend the heavyweight title for like a long time, a couple of years, and then he'd make his money and then come back around. But I would say, yeah, Spence Crawford, and that's the one that really did it for me this year. I just it delivered at such a high level, and it showed us what boxing at its very best could be. Two class champions, and I hope Spence doesn't take the immediate rematch because I think he'll get wrecked even at 154.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing that I think a lot of fans are missing with this is that will Spence be healthier at 154 pounds? Obviously, he would. We all know he's a big guy. We all know he struggles to make weight. But with that being said, Crawford will be healthier too.
And it wasn't just weight that was the problem, man. He got outthought. He got outplanned, outboxed at every level. And it kind of showed that he's kind of basic, and sometimes fundamentals is great. Sometimes you want to be fundamental against a guy that's unorthodox, but Bud's footwork, his ability to get range and keep it, to kind of hide where he is and then pop in, that jab that he set up especially for this fight. It's just like he barely broke a sweat by the end of the fight. To me, I was like, the fight was over when he came out with Eminem and wearing the fisherman's outfit. I was like, oh no.
That
you
was
could feel the whole energy in the room change. You're like, oh shit, he's really going all the way with this.
I seen the fishing net over. I was like, oh man, but it was a big event. I was very excited to hear of the reports of anywhere from around 650 to 700 pay-per-view buys. That's fantastic in this day and age with piracy the way that it is. And it outdid, from what I'm hearing, Jake Paul, Nate Diaz, and I was afraid that was going to possibly double up this fight. But it just shows that boxing, like you said, boxing is alive and well. That narrative that boxing is dead, no, that's not the case at all. And that fight proved it, because these are two guys that they weren't really mega stars, but we got a mega star out of that fight with Terrence Crawford, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think boxing is, like Larry Merchant said, nothing can kill it, nothing can save it. It's not as healthy as it could be, but it's far from dead. We've still got a lot of good fights to go in the year, and we're a little more than halfway done. But I just think like Canelo Charlo, we're looking
I was going to ask you about that.
I'm looking at the upset special. Canelo hasn't looked good for a couple fights. He's got a guy that's got all the tools. He's moving up in weight, and I think his frame could take it. When you look at them next to each other, he doesn't look like a small man who can't take 168. Stranger things have happened in this sport, and some would say that style is all wrong for Canelo. So we're going to see. I haven't made my official pick, and I want to spend some time like watching their fights again. But maybe he was deficient being at that weight. Him and his brother have been splitting 154 and 160 for a long time, but they're twins. He had to be giving up something to make that 54. I'm not crazy about the inactivity, but I never am. But that's modern boxing anymore. So, but Canelo hasn't looked good in a while. Since before the Golovkin fight, I think. So that Golovkin and then Ryder, he looked a little rough to me. So maybe his arm's better or his hand and maybe his knee's healthy and he'll be all right. But the older you get, Father Time is undefeated.
Yes, that is true. And going back to the days when you were on Leaving in the Ring, I remember listening to a show where you guys were talking with Canelo, and this was, I believe, leading into the Josecito Lopez fight, and he hung up on you guys.
Yeah, Dave asked him repeatedly, what do you think is a champion's responsibility? Because I think he was fighting Josecito, and he wasn't taking like a tougher fight.
Yeah.
Canelo just hung up the phone. This is classic. It's just like, I covered Canelo like his first press conference in Los Angeles. I think in the States, Golden Boy was like introducing him to English, American reporters, and like it was me and ESPN Deportes on like a Sunday, and I forget what event it was. It was like a Mexican parade of some kind down in downtown LA, and he's just wearing like a white T-shirt and jeans, just kind of a simple kid, about 18, maybe he was 17. They were lying, and super nice guy, and over the years, just watching him from afar, like he was always cool every time I interviewed him until that time. But even then, I kind of was like, he's kind of a rising king. Like I don't begrudge him. Why does he need to be grilled by us? He's just like, well, I'm over it. But to see him where he is now, man, from that kid that I met that day, it's really quite something. He's I don't believe in that whole face of boxing thing, but he's certainly an ambassador for boxing and a very good one.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, the face of boxing thing, it's just one of those things that's a fan-driven narrative, but there's no
Yeah.
doubt that Canelo's, as far as like monetary goes, he's the number one guy. We know that the Mexican American fans, they've been supporting the sport of boxing for the longest time, So anytime that there's a fighter of Mexican nationality, yeah, they're gonna get behind him, and he's right there, But yeah, guys, we're gonna wrap it up. But I also want to remind you this: don't forget, this is not the first time that Gabe's been on this channel. We had him on, I believe it was in the winter of 2021, and we talked about the Margarito hand wrap situation.
Oh man,
So
yeah.
yeah, that was a great show. Actually, that's one of my favorite shows to do because so much information came out that nobody knew about that case, and that's what I love doing on this channel is just giving people information on things like that. So check that out as well, guys. Okay. And Gabriel, go ahead and give us some parting shots here. Let everyone know where they could find you, and then we'll wrap this one up, man.
Yeah, man, you can find me here at like my name, Gabriel_Montoya on Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter. I'm not going to call it X.
X.
Yeah, you can follow me on the gram if you want to see pictures of me acting or my cat or Burning Man at the Gabriel Montoya on Instagram. And if you really want to hang out, I do the Twitch thing on the down low under Bandit_Olympus. Every once in a while, I'll play some video games and talk about my other passion in life, which is American politics. And I'll just like play Red Dead Redemption 2 or GTA 5 and talk about whatever political statement or whatever political news is going on for the day for like an hour. Every once in a while, you can just catch me doing that. So if you're into Twitch, you can find me there.
All right, there it is, guys. Check him out. All right, and once again, Gabe, thanks so much for coming on, man. Appreciate it. And like I said, I know it's late. My schedule is all messed up right now because of my kids, but we're getting there. All right, my little one, hopefully in about another few months or so, she'll start sleeping all through the night, and then
How
I
old?
won't be. She's almost 2. She's gonna be 2 in a few
Oh
months.
wow.
So
Okay, man.
yeah.
I'm surprised you're awake at all. Yeah.
I know.
That's
And
awesome.
at my age, it's brutal. My oldest one, I was able to get away with it because I was still like in my 20s, But now that I'm close to 40, no, it ain't cutting
Well,
it.
if you get on that TRT, you should be fine.
Hey, I might talk to my doctor about that, man. All right. But guys, for Gabriel Montoya, this is G Funky Boxing. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and we'll see you guys on the next one. We're out of here.